You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com, the ChrisVossShow.com. Welcome to the big show, my friends and family. We certainly appreciate you. The Chris Voss Show, the family that loves you, but doesn't judge you, at least not as harshly as your mom does. Now go clean your room. Anyway, guys, welcome to the big show. We certainly appreciate being here. As always, we are the greatest minds, the best guests of any podcast in the world. So refer to your family and friends. Go to youtube.com/Chris Voss, goodreads.com/Chris Voss, and the big LinkedIn group, LinkedIn newsletter, all that crazy stuff we do over on LinkedIn. Today, we have an amazing author on the show and brilliant insight into minds, life, and some of the things that are affecting us in them and how we deal with our issues and problems. She is the author of the amazing book you can find wherever fine books are sold. But remember, stay out of those alleyway bookstores because, you could hurt yourself. You could trip over something and get mugged. She is the author of the book. August 19th, 2022 came out. The Plans He Has for Me, a 12-week daily devotional for freedom from alcohol. Roseanne Forte is on the show with us today, and she's going to be sharing her forte in this amazing book and insight and life. You like how I played that?
I love that. I love it.
Her forte. So Roseanne Forte was a successful C-suite executive and ministry leader in the church. She was a working mom of 4 and a social drinker. Over the years, life stresses and a difficult marriage created an environment where her alcohol usage increased significantly. After the collapse of her marriage, her drinking further escalated, and she felt like a fraud with church and God. AA was not an option for her in her mind. She'd already submitted to God and didn't want to call herself an alcoholic. When COVID-19 hit, she enrolled in a coaching program to put alcohol to the side for 3 months. Her experience was extremely transformational, and she recognized God's instructions embedded in the entire process. She became free of the psychological slavery of this habit through this process. She identified what alcohol had stolen from her life and understood that God had a better plan for her. She felt called to document what she learned with a daily devotional so others can experience God's promises through scriptural instruction with a hope and a better plan for the future. And she's written this amazing book. Welcome to the show, Roseanne. How are you?
I am wonderful. How are you, Chris?
I am awesome this morning. It's a glorious, what would you call it? Wednesday morning. People are watching this show going, it's not Wednesday, because they download it over 90 days and watch it. But welcome to the show. Give us your .com so people can find you on the interweb.
Yeah, thank you for asking me about that because I follow you and I was expecting that question. So I developed a special URL just for your listeners.
Nice.
Yeah, www.theplanshehasforme.com/Voss.
There you go.
Yeah, and there you can find a resource that I developed called Freedom from Alcohol. And that will give you the 5 foundational principles to deal with what I call the psychological slavery of your alcohol habit.
Nice. And this is a really important issue that's going on. We talked in the green room before the show. How big of an alcohol issue is out there in the public? What are the stats and studies that you found?
Yeah, thanks for asking because this is just not in the public enough. First of all, statistically from National Institute of Health worldwide, it's a problem for 9% of the people in the world. Mm-hmm. And some of the statistics are astounding. I just read something in November of 22 that said 1 in 5 American deaths of people between the ages of 20 and 49 are alcohol related.
Wow.
That's 20%. That's big, right? Mm-hmm. I read another study that said there's been a 40% spike in liver cancer over the last 10 years. And that report came from 2019 before COVID. Mm-hmm. cirrhosis of the liver is expected to triple 3 times what it is today by 2030. And now I know that sounds like a long time away, but that's only 7 years, right?
Holy crap.
Yeah, triple. Like
It was just 220. It was just 2020 a couple years ago, or 1 year ago or something. I don't know. It feels like that.
And people don't know this. It's a leading contributing factor to so many cancers, including breast cancer. And I am just trying to spread some awareness about this, about the substance, and take away the focal point on a shortcoming of the individual, because I think we've been lied to about what the substance really has to offer us.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking in the green room about how we both grew up in that era where, doctors were smoking in ER rooms in hospitals.
Yes.
You can watch some of the old Clint Eastwood movie. I think it's a Clint Eastwood movie where he's in the hospital, like everyone in San Francisco, like smoking. The doctor's like, I don't know why this patient has cancer. And, we went through that whole kind of period there in the 70s where they started putting the warning labels on cigarettes and stuff like that. And, I remember my grandparents used to smoke heavily, and they grew up in that age. But one set of my grandparents did. But it was kind of interesting, because they were putting out that thing. And I remember everyone's like, smoking bad. But, the same sort of warnings are on alcohol, from the government.
They're not yet, but I think they should be. There's some warnings, but not enough, probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, go ahead.
Yeah, and I've been through the journey with alcohol where in my 30s I started to drink heavily. I was using it as a crutch. I was using it to bury some childhood trauma. And I was, for me, it was always a fuel. It was a sugar. It was a juice. And so I'd be like, oh man, I'm tired. I want to work some more. I've got, all this paperwork from running multiple companies. I'll have some booze. And for me, it was always rocket fuel. So I could party all night long. I could do whatever I wanted. As long as I was drinking, I was having fun. I never got to a point where I was drinking in the morning. That was kind of a rule. I never really drank midday unless we were having a business lunch or someone was buying. And but for the most part, it was an evening. Sometimes it was kind of like a wind down to knock me out so I could sleep well. And I thought I slept well on it, but I didn't. Exactly. And I kind of abused it pretty hard for about 20 years. And then I kind of reached the point where my body was like, you know what, this isn't fun anymore. The hangover started coming hard. I'd have 3 beers and have a hangover, and it just wasn't fun anymore. One couple hours of fun on Friday night would be 3 days of just body drag. And I started really feeling it in my body. And so I started making a difference in my life, and I started weaning off. And I kind of went through a journey like you did with COVID, where I was just like, hey man, some stuff needs to go to improve the quality of my life. Or, I wasn't sure if we were all going to die with the, thing that was going around. And we were all kind of like, I think, contemplating life. And you kind of went through that journey too, in COVID, where you kind of looked at your life and wrote this book.
Yeah, there's usually an event that happens where we go, okay, I'm done. And for me, the event was COVID-19. But unfortunately, when it comes to this, I don't know if you had an event that really had you snap out, but my experience is like there's a diagnosis, or there's a problem with a relationship, a car accident, a DUI. Like, okay, now I've got to, you have a problem for years before you're ready to go, okay, we're done. And I knew, it sounds like you understand this, but I call it the mental gymnastics. Only after 5, only on weekends, only with other people, only on holidays, only for Valentine's Day, it's like, and then, what generally happens is you just start breaking your promises to yourself. And for me, that started really affecting what I call my mental health. Mm-hmm. And my self-confidence, my self-esteem was going down. And, I've coached some, I used to be an executive coach for this. I now just do this more faith-based coaching. Mm-hmm. But there comes a point in really high-performing people's lives where you go, wait a minute, my health, like I couldn't control my weight. My mental health, what's wrong with me? I'm like a go-getter. I can do things. I can put my mind to it and I can do it. Why can't I do this? My blood pressure was going up. I think I was agitated, and I used to believe that was just me. It was me going through withdrawals, so just so much happier now. And, but it's hard. It's, it sounds like you were able to control it on your own, but most people, really struggle and need some outside help with that.
I think, and this is my opinion, so I'm not a psychologist, so let's make that disclosure. Please see a psychologist or see, someone for therapy like Rose. But what you speak to, and I like what you said about the excuses that we make for stuff. And we do that, what you've written about and talked about, and we're going to talk about today, it translates to so many other things, because I was doing that same sort of excuses, not only with booze, but I was doing that with food. And sometimes we do that with procrastination and things that sabotage our success, or things that, we don't want to do in life that maybe block us. We make these excuses, like when I lost weight and I still losing weight and on intermittent fasting and stuff, I used to have all these food rules and regulations. And I had the same with alcohol, like you mentioned, where it's like, well, it is Friday night. It's tie one on Saturday night. It's, tie one on. And this is midweek, tie one on. I'm going to have I was doing at one point about half a bottle of vodka a night. Now I'm a big guy. At one point I had reached a point of 350 pounds. So, but I've always had a high drug tolerance too. So it takes a lot, like aspirin. I even have to take a lot of aspirin just to get it to kick in. For some reason, drugs, all kinds of drugs have a high tolerance for me, which is probably good, because I would probably do harder drugs if they easily affected me, and they don't. Like, stuff like cocaine. It's just not even worth taking for me. It just gives me a bad postnasal drip and coffee. And I think I tried that twice, and I was just like, this is really annoying. I'll just go back to booze. But, what you talk about, those excuses that we make, the rules that we make and usually end up breaking, are kind of the ways we self-con ourselves. It's the same thing with, New Year's resolution. Oh, I'll make this New Year's resolution. Yeah, I'll keep it this year. And I haven't kept it for the last 50 years that I've been making resolutions. But yeah, you're right. There's sometimes that sort of point that wakes us up. What was it for you that brought you to the moment?
Yeah. So I knew I had a problem, especially after my divorce. I mean, the blinds were shut. I was by myself and I was drinking, and I was like, oh, this is not good. And I want to share this because it's real for a lot of people that have an alcohol problem. And if it wasn't for my faith, I probably would have done something to leave the earth. Like, I was done. I just didn't believe I had anything left to give. And I would just be praying, like, take me, God, I'm kind of ready, right? If the bus comes by, I'm good, right? I want to be with you, right? And, but apparently that wasn't the case, because when COVID came, and we can all remember this picture, right, of the news and the bodies in Italy, and it's just zooming into the US. And I said, well, even though I'm okay with going, I don't want to go on a ventilator in a hospital without my family. So that was the defining moment, that because alcohol, again, I don't know if people know this, I did know this, that alcohol suppresses your immune system. It also suppresses your lung function. I used to be a super heavy smoker, 2 to 3 packs a day. I was just like kind of a pedal to the metal kind of person. And but I quit like 17 years ago. So my lungs were not in great shape. And, your immune system and your lung function were two things you really needed to do to survive COVID with. So I just decided, that's it. I need to quit. And I was scared into quitting. And I was doing it on my own for 2 to 3 weeks. But then I entered a coaching program. And I know looking back that even though I thought at the time that would have been the last time I drank, I don't think without that program I would have understood the transformation that was available, and the new neurological habit that I needed to create to just transform my way of thinking around it. So
There you go.
yeah.
I mean, it's different for other people. I think what I started to preface earlier, where I'm not a psychologist, is I think there's some people that have addiction. They have you can, and again, I've heard different stories on this, but there are people that are sometimes born with a gene that's passed down from their parents, or maybe it's learned behavior. Yeah, call it what you want. I'm not a psychologist, but I've talked to my friends, and for me, there was always, in my opinion, let's put it that way, I'm not a psychologist, legal disclosure there. But my opinion was there were people that have addiction. They have genetic or a DNA sort of addiction to something, and they can't put it down. They Jones if they don't have it. They shake. I've seen my friends, visually shake if they don't get their hit of smoke or whatever their drug of choice is. For me, I was using it as an abuse, as a crutch. I wasn't ever addicted to it. I didn't want it in the morning. I didn't want it midday usually. And for me, I was using it as a fuel, but I was abusing it because I was abusing my body. I was basically taking, the club to myself. And you con yourself. You're like, hey, I'm using this for fuel. I'm getting some work done. I've got some more files or accounting I'm going to do in the companies, and I'm going to have a drink, and that's going to give me a couple more hours. And then I'm going to sleep like a baby. And somehow I had this dummy idea that I slept good on it. And people are just like, you don't sleep good on it. I'm like, I do. But, it reached a point for me. Early on years ago, I had a girlfriend who suffered from genetic alcoholism, I'm going to call it. And her father had the same weekend alcoholic sort of thing. She wouldn't drink during the week, and neither would he. But when he would come home during the weekend, from Friday when he came home, he would go down into his, one of those old tiki bars in the 60s and 70s and drink himself to oblivion for the whole weekend until Monday. And then he would get up and be a functioning banker for Monday through Friday. And she mirrored that, whether through addiction or habit, but she definitely had an issue where when she would drink, she would physiologically change. It was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, where her face would change, like everything about her would change. And instead of being a fun sort of drinker, like, I don't know if you were, but I was, she would become very angry and very aggressive, and she would amp up to a whole different level. It was like two different people. And she had a problem of addiction where if she couldn't get to it, she would drink whatever she could, whether it was Vicks, NyQuil, or even hairspray. She would drink it if she needed it. And so I saw what that life was like. And she, eventually moved on. I had to move on. And she eventually died of technically alcoholism. She died of potassium deficiency because alcohol depletes your potassium and takes vitamins out of your system. And she eventually died of that. And it was a very sad story that her daughter found her. And, I was close to her daughter, and so we're still friends to this day, but seeing the damage that took, played a toll. And so I think that's important. She had reached several crisis points in her life of going to AA, being put in a facility to try and control her rehab. She almost killed someone with a car, drunk driving. She had to have the whole thing installed. So I watched that go, but it really didn't affect me. And I went on a journey with my health where I was losing weight. I was becoming veganese. I was eating more healthy, trying to lose weight. And the meantime, I was drinking the whole time. It just reached a point for me where I was like, I was just like, I'm tired of that hangovers. You get older and you can't do it. And I mean, I would have 3 beers and have a hangover the next morning. And I started listening to my body, and I would feel just how it would drag for 3 days, the dehydration, the water gain. I'd feel bloated the next morning after drinking because your body's trying to recompensate for the thing. And I was just, it just finally just came to the point where it's like, man, these 2 or 3 hours on a Friday night or, whatever night I was drinking just doesn't, it's just 3 days of drag. It's just like, it hurts.
I love that you're bringing this up because that is a really big part of changing your relationship with alcohol, which is what you did, right? There is the substance abuse part, the substance. But once the substance is out of your body, it's a neurological habit. It's something we go to because we're used to it. And the only way that we can change our relationship with it is to develop an awareness of how it's treating us. We have what I call this romanticism about it that does not equate with reality. And what I try and do in the devotional, in my free resource, and in my coaching is solve for what's called, and I'm sure you know this, cognitive dissonance, which is believing two competing thoughts about the same thing. And right?
Yeah.
I love alcohol. I needed to have fun. I can't go on vacation without it. It's like, it won't be romantic. It won't, like, I'll lose all my friends. Versus, oh my gosh, I have hangovers. I can't sleep at night. I'm gaining weight. This is so bad. I got to quit, right? Which is true.
Yeah.
Which is true. And you have to just remind yourself and develop this awareness. And it sounds like that's exactly what you did. You developed an awareness of going, wait, this is not meeting my goals. I have different goals for myself for the future. And, faith-based, I tell people that God has a better plan, get out of his way. So there is a better plan. There is a better life, and having that hope. But I've coached people out of rehab. You've got to solve it medically first and get, detox and have your body go back into a state of homeostasis, but then you're still left with the habit, the thought patterns, and those need to change.
Yeah. And like I say, what you're talking about with these excuses and habits and the ways we kind of BS ourselves through, whatever, and have a little drink, or, I would always be like, yeah, I'll just have one glass. And then it would come to,
I know that one. I heard that one before in my head.
It's like, well, I'll just pour a little cup more of the vodka there. I'll just have half a shot than I normally have, and then you're just like, fuck it. And I used it for a fuel. I think, I don't know, it turned to sugar for me, which I think it does for a lot of people in the system, if I understand it correctly. And so it was a fuel. I mean, I could literally, I was better at everything when I did alcohol. I would party. I could stay up later. I had energy. I used to go to Sundance, and Sundance is like night-long parties all night long. I mean, you do parties at the clubs, and then it goes up to the houses in the hills in Sundance. I think there were some times where I spent whole weeks being drunk, and then I get up the next morning, pound a rock star, and then keep going. And then I started experiencing, as I got older, dehydration, and I'm like, what's going on? And I started crashing physically, and my friends are like, you need to hydrate, you need to take different things to hydrate yourself. And I'm like, why? And they're like, you're getting old, stupid, doesn't work anymore. And go ahead.
Dehydrates your brain, and your brain is the operating system for everything in your body. I mean, it's how we breathe, how our heart beats, how we respond to things, how we think. And that's why when we move it to the side, or mental clarity, we can sleep better. We just have more energy. But yeah, I know what you're saying, because when I drank, I could stay up really late. And now it's 10 o'clock is late for me.
Yeah, I'm kind of getting to be that same way. But, one thing I didn't understand is it is a toxin to your body. It is not a natural compound. It is a toxin. And the reason you get drunk and you get that wild feeling in your head is because you're poisoned. You poison yourself. And I had to really come to terms with that. The other thing that I didn't understand at the time, or really didn't want to accept, I suppose, was it really affects, as a man, your testosterone. And we already have a lot of problems as men in this world, where we have so many of these estrogenic chemicals in plastics and everything else, soaps and everything else, and chemicals. I mean, it's so bad that women are getting their periods earlier. And there's so much estrogenics in our food and chemicals, plastic, and all this stuff that we're exposed to. We already have a low testosterone level. And so it drops your testosterone immensely. And I found since I quit drinking and also getting a lot of estrogenics out of my soaps and cleaners and everything that my body's exposed to, that it's done just great things for my testosterone. And I'm 55 now. And so men at my age, in our late 40s and our 50s, our testosterone falls off heavily. In fact, you really want to go get tested and stuff. And if you're a man and your testosterone drops off, you start having problems with cancers and other things that come up. Women, especially too, if their estrogen comes up or down, there's issues with that. And I just started looking at it. I'm like, it's really time I quit. And the money I was spending too, Jesus, I was, buying a bottle of vodka that, some nice Tito's or something. And I think it's like $40 a pop for a liter.
I cannot believe, and I try and tell people that, like, the money that I save, because I like going, fine dining is a thing. And I go out to dinner and I order whatever I want. And without the alcohol, I think alcohol adds like 60%. And I went out, I live in Scottsdale, so I live by some resorts.
Oh, yeah.
And I brought a friend out. I love going to the happy hours at the resorts because they're beautiful resorts and they're right around the corner from me. So when I have company, I go there and I bought my friend a drink. It was $20. I was like, what? $20 for one drink? So, yeah, that was it. Just every time I go out now, I'm grateful for the meal I got without the added unnecessary expense. And I'm also grateful to drive home and not have to worry about.
Oh, yeah. Hey, you're like, am I buzzed? Am I over the thing? What if I get pulled over? I might be at the edge.
Let me just be honest. I was always probably more than, and I'm just so grateful that I didn't kill someone else. I didn't kill myself. You know what I mean? I look back and I'm like, what I could have done that I didn't. I just, again, as you say, wasn't not honest with myself about the problem that I had created.
Yeah. And I think you identify something that we do with any sort of addiction, food, and not meeting our goals, not procrastinating, not doing what we need to do. Pick your addiction, pick your problem, pick your issue in life. You're not focusing on what you do. And I can see, looking back, how much it affected the quality of my life, how much it really affected my performance. And the whole time I thought I was doing really better with it. It really wasn't. And you're not in a healthy state of mind. When you spend the next day just hungover, and, I started losing days. That was the other problem. I would lose the next day. And then for 3 days, I would just feel the drag. My body was dehydrated, the bloating, and then I'd have to lose all the bloating, and your body was just going through this 3 to 4 day cycle of you hit it hard for a couple days, then you're feeling it, and just more and more it would become prevalent. And then, sometimes losing a couple days, being hungover, and you're just like, I'm going to go nap for a while, and it hurt, and the brain and the kidney, it feel like someone kicked me in the liver the next morning, and you're just like, what am I doing to myself? I mean, I would go through the cycle where I'd be like, okay, I'm going to quit drinking for a few days and clean up. And then I just go do it again. I'm just like, what are you doing? Like 2 or 3 hours of fun is 3 days of hell.
How many times did you quit before you were able to be successful with it, though? It kind of just wound down for me. Like there wasn't any moment of clarity. It's amazing.
It just wound down where I was just sick of it. And, part of it was getting healthier and eating healthier and veganese. And I was losing all this weight. But then the problem was I kept trying to lose weight. But when you're drinking, your body responds to the drinking and dehydration from it by loading up on water. And so I would get this bloating for like 2 or 3 days that I'd be carrying, where your body's trying to retain all the water it can to fight off, well, this idiot wants to drink for a day or two. Let's make sure we load up on water. And, so my weight would fluctuate. And I just would feel it more and more. And just getting in tune with your body is really important.
Absolutely.
And I just, I think I'd overcome the lies I've been telling myself with food and the excuses like we talked about, and going on that journey. You talk in your book. Let's get to some of this. You talk in your book about how, God and the importance of religion to you. I think most of my audience knows I'm an atheist, but people need things to go through life. They need things to experience. And certainly I understand the journey of, AA is really big into this, that sometimes you've got to put yourself in the hands of a higher power you kind of have to realize that maybe you don't have all the answers. Because the answers you're using aren't working clearly, right?
Right.
So let's talk about why that's important to people that are dealing with these issues, and how much a difference it made for you.
Yeah, and so I was faith-based, and I did love Jesus and read the Bible all the time. But as we all make excuses and see the word, we're like, yeah, God, that's patience. That's a really nice thing, but I don't have it. Yeah, God, drunkenness. But how do I survive? It's just I convinced myself that you cannot live life without alcohol. I had started at 13 to fit in, high school to have fun. I think you mentioned like the business, the occasional drink at lunch, Monday night happy hour, conference. I used it for romanticism, with my then husband. It was pervasive. And then I had, a stressful job, a difficult marriage, kids. I'm trying to balance everything. So now it's stress. I need it after, and look at our TV shows, right? Any TV show, you just cracking open the beer or open up the beautiful glass of wine to relax after work. Mm-hmm. I mean, I fell into all of those things. But all the time, I think for me, it was like, I know I'm capable of more. I know I was meant to do more. I was created to do more. I know I have gifts. And I wasn't using any of them. I had literally lost all of who I was by engaging in these things. And so I went through the secular program and I learned all these concepts. Of course I was praying to God, oh, please make this go away. I promise you, God, I'm not going to do that. It's like, I'm not only breaking promises with myself, I was breaking promises with God, which is like not good. Mm-hmm. And so just I went through this program and I transformed like I couldn't believe. And I'm like, why? What? Like, I'm trying to go through the church to get this transformation, and I have to go outside the church to be transformed. Having said that, most of what I learned in the secular program, I recognized as biblical principles like gratitude and, renewal of your mind. There's this concept now of neuroplasticity where years ago, right, we used to just think there's a diseased brain and you have to live with it and you just can't change it. But now science will share that you can change it. Excuse me, I lost my thing. So I was just going, wait, there's a scripture that says put on the full armor of God. Yeah, that was another yeah, God, that's a really nice concept. But but then when it's like the difference between knowing and doing, right? Mm-hmm. But when I started examining it, and like the first principle of putting on all the armor of God is putting on the belt of truth. Mm-hmm. Well, now we're talking about what we've been talking about in the show, right? This is about awareness and the truth of how it's affecting you and exposing the lie that you're telling yourself. And as I went through the process, I just felt more connected, I developed purpose. I think that purpose is to show light to others, to show that there's a possibility for something more, to know that you were created for something with a gift. We all know we have a gift. Everyone knows they have a gift. And whether or not it's something like, I wish I had always done, or I don't have time to do that. So in this 12-week process, I really encourage people to just find that gift, that innate gift, and use it, because that's what creates joy. And because now they have time, because before you've summarized it so well for me. Before, people would spend their time drinking, recovering from drinking, and thinking about how to quit drinking. That's a lot of time. And the thing is, so people can quit for, a month by white knuckling it, but then they're just looking forward to drinking on day 31, or day 41, or day 32 if it's dry January or sober October, day 41 if they're quitting for Lent. And so what happens is, after the first month, you start getting a little, like, you're excited the first month, you do it, then you're like bored. Like, how am I going to live like this? And so we really talk a lot about finding your gifts and enjoying life with things that you were created to enjoy it for, and using those gifts to help other people, to give light to other people. And I just really want people to go through that transformation, so that I give them a choice to choose. It's 12 weeks. And most programs, I think, if you go to rehab, you go to AA, a lot of programs are like, well, you got a problem, you got to do this forever. And instead of making them victim to it, I want to empower people with the ability to choose. And that's exactly what you've done, right? You choose going forward, because life is so much better.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, I started sampling. I mean, it basically dwindled down for me, where I was just like, I'm tired of feeling like shit. I'm tired of the hangover the next day, and I'm losing days. Like, it would be, I started looking at my week, and I'm like, okay, I'm drinking, half a bottle of vodka every night, every other night. And I'm losing days. Like, I'll lose the next day, and sometimes I'll lose the second day, where I'm just not functioning. And I was just like struggling to function. I was like, I need to do work. I need to work on my business. And yet I would go to sleep. It would hurt the podcast. I would go on a podcast, and I'd just be like drained, dehydrated, beaten up. My brain wouldn't be in focus. I couldn't be as funny anymore. And I started backing it off. I'm like, okay, well, I'll downgrade from vodka. I'll just drink beer, which is just awful, because beer and me just don't work together. All it does is make me want to pee, like, all the time. And it just goes, I don't know why vodka has a different whole experience for me. But so I was like, okay, I'll drink beer. And then finally it just got to the point where I think like 3 beers sat in my fridge for like a year. And it just dwindled down for me, and it wound down to where I was just like, and then I'd have a beer, and I'm like, this tastes like garbage. And I would still get hangover. And I'm like, okay, we're just not, screw this, man. I'm tired of everything hurting, my body hurting. You kind of reach an age, I'm 55 now. And when you wake up at 55, at least for me, stuff hurts. It's like spin the wheel pain day of like knee here, stub your toe there, back here, and I'm doing pretty good for my life, but you just kind of, stuff doesn't work right anymore, and you're just like, you've got to have, there's a lot of coffee that has to be drinking, and you got to hydrate, and I've got all the salts and all the crap to keep me going, and 50,000 tons of vitamins, and and right. So it just kind of wound down for me. And you've spoken this, that you quit telling yourself the lies, you quit telling yourself the cons that you're doing to yourself, and you get honest, right?
It's harder than you think for people. You are an inspiration, I think, for people that can do it on their own. But a lot of people secretly suffer with this. Like, why can't I stop? Why can't I do this? They're beating themselves up. And while they're beating themselves up, it's getting worse. They're drinking. they're drinking more because it's like, why bother? I'm a loser anyway, and it's like this slippery slope. And as you mentioned, it does depend on our genes. Some people can get trapped in this in the first year or two and very young. As the statistics I shared, the statistics of 20% of deaths are alcohol related between ages of 20 and 49. That's early on. I'm 60 something, unfortunately, but I feel very young.
Yeah.
And but it took me decades to get there, but eventually we'll all get there because, as you say, it's a substance, and it eventually starts controlling us as opposed to us controlling it.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the fact that we're just here talking about it and not making it shameful, because that's, I used to be a heavy smoker, and I quit kind of the same way you quit alcohol. It was because it was killing me. I wasn't a cigaretteaholic, a smokeaholic. I didn't recover from it. Those words for me, AA is there's many 12-step programs out there that it is actually known to be one of the best methodologies for, getting through substance abuse problems. However, I'm trying to address those people that thought like me with the words and the shame that goes with the words. And I want to talk about and bring light to the fact that people are starting to notice. The health community is starting to notice. I'm just seeing more and more articles, especially since COVID, about the severity of the alcohol problem. I think we are going to see commercials disappear eventually. I think that the warning labels are going to get far more severe about the risk of cancer. I think it's going to follow the trajectory of cigarettes. I don't know if you know this, but at Super Bowl, Heineken ran its first non-alcoholic beer commercial.
Yeah.
That is big. That's a recognition that people want something different. People are looking for something different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and more of a healthier option too. I honestly, I did wind down it myself, but I probably could have used a third-party intervention to really kick me in the head or go, hey man, I went 20 years ago to my girlfriend's AA meetings. I went to 2 AA meetings with her because she wouldn't go, and I was like, look, I'll go with you as a support. And back then I wasn't very drinking heavily because I was seeing what she was doing. And I think I was in my late 20s, and I said, look, I'll go to AA with you. And the stories at AA were horrifying. It was actually really good for me because it made me realize that I had to make a choice of her with my life. And I had met one of her friend's husbands through AA who also had a problem, and she had his own business, and her married to her with kids was very destructive. And I remember we had to do a mortgage one time because she ran off, and she was very angry and violent, and her physiology would change with alcohol. And I remember one time she beat him and the kids, and she ran off to Wendover, Utah, which is kind of like a little Vegas up there in Nevada. And she basically wrote a check with the casino for $150,000 against their house. Well, not really against their house, but she basically did a credit check and wrote a check for 150 grand, and she blew it in a weekend drunk as hell. And I had to do the mortgage to bail him out for his equity in his home to pay off the casino. And I remember he sat down with me and he goes, look, this guy that you're engaged to, you need to make a choice with your life, but you need to understand that you are going to live with this for all of your life. This is going to be your life. She's going to fall off the horse. She's going to go through ups and downs. It's going to be costly. There might be lawsuits. Certainly a few years after we broke up, she almost killed a guy which probably would have been a lawsuit for my company and my money. And she sideswiped him, almost killed him, broke, I think, his leg and his arm, and she had to have one of those things installed in her car. But I had to make a choice in my life where I had to say, do I want to live this way? Do I want to have this person's problems in my life, or do I need to go and do my own thing? And so we all have those choices to make. But it was interesting to me that the horrors of what I heard in AA still didn't awaken me to like, hey man, this can really go bad. You know, I would hear these stories of people that would lose everything, their wife, their kids, their home, their business, everything. They'd be living under a viaduct in a box. Then they do all this work, spend years recovering. And, you know, one day they would walk back into a bar. I'll just have one drink. And then they're back under the viaduct again. And it was horrifying and sad and just crippling, the stories I would hear. But it helped sober me up, at least to living a life that she had been living and with addiction. And she really had a hard time. She was in and out of rehabs. You know, her mother would constantly deal with it. And it was just sad. It was hard. It was a hard life. And so to me, this is a really important subject because, you know, whether you're going through that extreme or a minor version of it, you just need to recognize that this isn't the best thing for your life. It isn't the best thing for your health. It is a toxin. You are toxifying yourself. And, you know, I went through the fantasy of buying wines and cellaring them in my house and shipping them in from California and that whole thing. And it was great. It was kind of fun, and it was interesting.
I did that too. I love that.
You kind of con yourself into like, well, I'm living this sophisticated life. You know, I had the big bar at the house. I threw the big parties, you know, and you know, you're like, well, I'm being sophisticated with the Dom Perignon and the expensive stuff. You know, I'm not an alcoholic, and you know, I all those sort of silly things that you do. But man, I got to tell you, being on the other side and not having to wake up with a hangover, being able to wake up feeling energized, having energy for the day, it is so much funner and nicer.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that. That is actually foundational principle number 5 in my freedom from alcohol resource. But yeah, it's experiencing the prizes of running the race. And, you know, it just, you want to tell people, you know, I actually start with like, let's recognize what this has cost us, you know. And I love your story about the casino. So we talk about this in coaching a lot. Like every now and then it's like, what's the real cost? And it's just hysterical about the things that people don't realize. Well, I was a cheap drunk, like $10 a day. And I'm like, I just, that in and of itself is hard for me to understand. But then we kind of went through it. And I'm like, well, how about, you know, when you go out to the restaurants or vacation or, you know, this all adds up. You know, you're buying somebody else a drink. And she's like, oh yeah, there was that time at the casino where I was too drunk to get home and I had to buy a hotel room. I'm like, how about the money you spent at the casino? Like, you know, because I used to do that, like drinking, smoking, and casinos go really well together. And I keep doing something to my earbuds, but you know, it's costly when you start adding that up. And she's like, well, yeah, wait a minute. Then I used to take my elderly mother out once a week to lunch, and I'd order a couple of martinis for me, a martini for her. She had dementia. And I'd finish her martini because it was an $80 lunch, you know, every week. And I'm like, we just went from $10 a day to at least $40 a day. You know, but getting back to your point about like, this is amazing. That's what I want people to realize is the lie in your head. When you have a substance and and I get it, you get it. When we say, I can't have fun without it, I can't be romantic about it, I can't go on vacation without it, I can't have friends without it. I just want to sit right here today and tell you, you're lying to yourself. And I know it, and I understand it, and I feel it, but give it a shot. Like put it aside for 12 weeks, long enough not to detox your body for 30 days,
Mhm.
long enough to experience all these amazing benefits. And then you go, wow, my life really is better, which is
Yeah.
which is exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think about it now, and there were so many. I was losing like 2 or 3 days a week, and I was buying $40 bottles, sometimes more of Tito's vodka. So I'm buying expensive vodka. Then I'm mixing it with all sorts of crap. Sometimes whatever I had in the house. And sometimes you run out of your mixer, and you're like pouring nasty stuff into it just to take the edge off.
I just did it on the rocks.
Did you really? There you go.
Yeah.
And I was playing all sorts of games with myself. I'm like, you know what? I'll go do bourbon, and I'll go do scotch, and then I was always trying to search for the perfect hangover or not hangover. Like at one point, I was doing tequila with this tequila silver because it was the closest thing to a plant. It was supposed to give you less of a hangover. All sorts of games, and then I had a whole menagerie of con that I was doing at night. So when I would get drinking, I would take vitamin B. I'd take my vitamins. I'd drink like a half a gallon of water, all this hydration pills and stuff that you're supposed to take for hydration and stuff. And I'm like, I'll play this game. And it kind of worked for a little bit. Like it would be like, okay, the hangover's not as bad. So if I just take my little cocktail of vitamins the night before, and then people are like, hey, if you drink and then you take a glass of water and then you take a drink and then you glass of water. I had so many games I was playing to beat the hangover, and finally I just like, hey, you know what? You're old. Your body doesn't recover as well. You've kind of ground down the machine, and yeah, and to me, life is richer. Like getting up, doing what I want, enjoying my podcast, enjoying other things. It's so much richer, and never having to worry about downtime where I'm just like, the whole day where the next day you're just like, I'm just going to lay in bed in the fetal position and everything hurts. My brain hurts. You're trying to, and then, all the Tylenol you're taking, if you're really familiar with Tylenol, acetaminophen.
No, that's bad when you combine it with alcohol. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it can kill your liver. It's really awful medicine for you. And so, I just reached a point where I'm just like, I'm just not doing anymore. So this is great. And I'm glad you coach people through it, because people probably need to reach out. I mean, you can do the wind down thing that I do, but I probably abused myself for way too many years when really I should have said, hey, maybe we should call in somebody to help me and coach me and kick me in the head a little bit, and take this on, because, sometimes you're not the best person to fix your problems.
Well, and as you know, like you went to the AA meetings and people talk about it. And I do a lot of research, whether it's scientific research or just people that haven't drank in 30 years. And I'm like, well, what made the difference? And a lot of times they're not going to AA anymore. And I'm like, well, what was the biggest part of it? And 100% of the answers, the other people and the connection of the other people doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. And I want to share that, because that's what I'm trying to do is like, let's all just admit this is like, it's controlling us. We're not controlling it. And let's get together and talk about it. And so we don't feel alone. Mm-hmm. Do you know, when I talk to people and they know what I do, a lot of people will come up and go, I don't even like drinking. And I order a drink at the bar just to fit in. Yeah. And it's just this pressure to drink when you're, in mixed company. Mm. And I find that now when I go out to social situations, I have people either say, wow, I wish I could do that. Like come to a bar and not drink, or other people choose not to order a drink because I'm not, you're giving people permission to not drink who don't want to drink anyway. Yeah. So it's really is a great group discussion, and getting out of your head. Getting out of your head is a big part of this.
Yeah, and you're right. People do that social drinking because they feel peer pressure. I've had friends that have alcohol problems, and they order duels or the non-alcoholic stuff. And I've had people talk about the shame of that. And you know what? Maybe I just reached a point where I don't give a heck what other people think. But I also just like, I'll just order Coke. If anybody asks, what I'm drinking, if you feel shamed, say Coke and rum. They don't know. Like, I've never had anybody say, "Oh, let me see what you're really drinking there, Chris. That looks like Coke and rum," or, like a vodka Red Bull. You're like, you can just order a Red Bull, and people don't know. And so I've never had anybody say, "Hey, I think you're lying to me. Let me drink your drink and see if it's really a Coke and rum. There's no rum in there. But you're lying." No one cares.
Yeah,
no one really cares.
I do share that with people that, maybe when they start the journey, they have to stay out of social situations because they don't feel strong enough. But at some point, they'll feel strong enough to go in it. And and then I say, just be proud of your choice. My go-to drink is generally soda water, cranberry, and lime, which they don't even charge you for in a lot of places.
Really?
I'm willing to pay for it, but a lot of places don't even charge. Yeah, but I get a lot like, "Oh, what are you drinking? It looks so good." So people ask me that a lot, and I just tell them what I'm drinking. But that's actually what I coach is be proud of your choice to be alcohol free. Just be proud of it. When you say, or here's another thing that people talk about, they like, how do you respond when somebody goes, "Well, why aren't you drinking?" And I would go, "Well, I'm just challenging myself. It was just kind of like making me feel kind of bad." Do you really think there's anybody that questions that statement that is a drinker?
No. And you know what's funny is it's kind of a brag, a flex, and it's kind of your own shaming that you're doing to other people. Because I'll tell people, I'm like, no, I gave up drinking. And they're like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't ever have an addiction problem, but I just got tired of it, and so I quit. And it's more healthy, and it raises my testosterone." And they just then the shame's on them. They just kind of look at you like, "I wish I could do what you're doing." And I'm like, "Well,
exactly.
sucks to be you."
Oh my gosh, exactly.
Yeah, shame back. Just pass that ball back over the net.
But this is a big revelation for people stuck in this belief that they have to drink. And when they first experience this, well, wait, people are curious. How do you do that?
Yeah. They're like, "How do you do that?" They're like, "God, I wish I could be like you." And you're like, "Yeah, you do. Sucks to be you, man."
I'm like, "Yeah,
you have a problem. I don't. Fuck you."
You get to be an inspiration. So yeah.
So there's no more shame. You're putting shame on them. So I like that.
I don't like to think of it that way. I like to think of it as being an inspiration for other people to make good choices.
Yeah. I'm either an inspirational or a narcissist who likes, being my own thing. So I don't know. It's a thing.
Well, the other thing is I don't want to shame people into drinking. This is everybody's choice. I don't want to be judgmental about it. I'm addressing the people who are secretly suffering and going, "I need to do something about this. What do? I can't do it. I can't do it." If you're drinking and you're not having a problem with it and it's not affecting your health or your sleep or anything, like, it's a free world, right? We just make our choices. And, in terms of my faith, we get to choose God, not choose God, make choices all over the place. And I want to be choice-based. And for me, it's just understanding the consequences of that particular choice are very clear to me, very clear.
Yeah. It makes all the difference in the world. And one thing I know we're running a little bit long here, but one thing I thought it did was I thought it helped me sleep better. And it doesn't. It actually makes a horrible sleep.
My kids, so I have grown children, and what I love about me doing this, and they drink, all of them do, and I don't, they just see what I'm doing, but they're all having this awareness come up. Like my oldest son, he has, a Garmin watch. He's pretty healthy, but he likes to drink too. And he's like, "Mom, I noticed, like, even when I have 2 drinks, my my sleep is not as good. And that's all I want. That's all I want is for them to, nobody told me this when I was young. I just want people to develop awareness about the substance and what it's doing to our bodies. Yeah.
Plus, it's, if you're trying to be healthy, it's really dumb. I'll just say that. It's really dumb. And that's kind of what I came to the conclusion. Like, here I am trying to eat healthy, lose weight, take care of my body, listen to my body, and I'm still drinking. Like, I'm eating salads and vegetables and healthy foods and telling people how great it is. Meanwhile, I'm shoving toxins into my body that, I used to do with Big Macs or whatever, fast food. And, it's kind of funny, you see people, they're like, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to work out and I'm going to go walk a mile and I'm going to do my steps and I'm going to eat my food right. And I'm going to eat healthy foods and not go to McDonald's. And then I'm going to pound half a bottle of vodka.
Oh, I did that. I was going to a really, I had a personal trainer and they were pushing me hard. And I'd always go, well, I got to train at 6 a.m. I can't drink tonight. So that was my motivation. But, come Sunday and there's a Chargers game. I was in San Diego and we'd go to the game. I'd be drinking all day long. And whatever benefit I made during the week, I threw away single-handedly on one day of drinking and eating. It was horrendous, but yeah, I played that game too.
Well, after you've watched Phillip Rivers throw sabotage enough games, you do drink. I'm a Raiders fan. I'm a Raiders fan, so there's a lot of drinking that goes on with the games where you're just like, seriously, are we losing 3 games into the season and not going to make the playoffs again for the 20th year in a row? Yeah.
I actually went to the Super Bowl with the Raiders in it.
Oh, did you? Was that the one that Tom Brady stole it from us?
I can't remember. It was in San Diego.
Huh.
And the Raiders fans were really nice because I always used to be afraid of the Raiders fans. Yeah, at the Super Bowl they were.
Huh. I think a different contingency goes to the Super Bowl because the tickets are expensive, then goes to the normal games. I went to the only Raiders game I've ever been to, and I need to go to the new Las Vegas Coliseum. But the only Raiders games I went to was the San Francisco Raiders game, and the violent. It was like being at and I've been a Raiders fan all my life, but it was like being in a prison yard. And I've never been fewer times afraid for my life. And I'm a big guy. I'm a strong guy, and I have a kind of resting bitch face. So people see me and they're going, "Leave him alone." And so I can get a look like you really don't want to screw with me. But I've never been so afraid in my life. I think there were fights breaking out because the San Francisco, and I think the Chargers kind of have, I don't know, I never went to Chargers game, but the thing between the Raiders and the Raiders are pretty crazy. And the amount of fights that broke out, were just insane. But Phillip Rivers was a great quarterback. I don't think did he ever get a Super Bowl ring?
Nope.
But he was like Tony Romo. He was like so great, and then he would just collapse somewhere. So anyway, enough jokes. I don't want to lose the Chargers crowd. But you guys kind of got betrayed there with the whole move to LA. What was that about? Jesus.
Yeah.
No, that'll cause drinking right there.
Yeah, that was just horrible.
Yeah, I thought that was a little rude. I mean, the Raiders needed a new Coliseum, and Oakland was not good, and that Coliseum was not good for us sharing that baseball team. I used to watch us scramble through the damn dirt from the baseball diamond. I'm like, what is going on over here? Why can't we do better? But I'm happy now with where we're at. And Las Vegas is such a cool city anyway. So, but yeah, San Diego needs to have its own. It's a beautiful place. It needs to have its own.
No professional sports survive.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah.
Baseball's still there. Padres are still there, but that's about it.
There you go. Well, it'll probably change. I don't know. Maybe they'll move back or whatever. But it's kind of rude. Like if you're a Chargers fan, I'm like, what a betrayal.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking. Really heartbreaking.
Well, don't drink over it. It's been wonderful to cite you, and I think we've made some great stories and hopefully inspired some people. How can people reach out to you, Rose, get to know you better, and what you're doing, and maybe get some help?
Yeah, again, www.theplanshehasforme.com and then /boss for your free resource. And then I just this week started my own podcast. It's called
Oh, wow.
Say Goodbye and Imagine. Seems pretty consistent with our talk, right?
There you go.
Yeah, I just want people to understand, stories about what's possible when they say goodbye to something that they're afraid to say goodbye to.
Definitely. Don't be afraid to say goodbye to this stuff. It's a toxin, man. I mean, just study the science of it. You're poison. It is poison you're putting in your thing, and it's not fun. And your life is going to be so much better for it. If you're a man, especially in your older ages, please, the amount of testosterone it drains out of your system is intense. And I imagine it does some damage with women. You know, if you do have too much estrogen,
it's more toxic to women, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. The science is it affects women far more seriously than men.
Yeah, I imagine so with hormones but I mean, if you have too much
smaller, they're usually smaller and they're drinking stronger drinks, and I don't know the way their body processes it. It's just really not good, and that's
and too much estrogen or too much testosterone can lead to different cancers and different things. And when you get older, man, you don't need cancer in your life. I highly recommend not having it. So there you go. So it's great that people have this. And thank you very much for being on the show. We really appreciate it, Rose.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
There you go. Folks, order up the book wherever fine books are sold. It's available now on Amazon and other places. The Plans He Has for Me, a 12-step daily devotional for freedom from alcohol by Rose and Forte. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time. And that should have us out, Rose.